There he is. Little smallmouth, IR jig. Hey, that was a quick release, but let's sit down. I want to show you guys why this is my favorite jig from Evergreen International, the IR jig. Hey everybody, Cody Meyer here. Hey, out here on the water in Idaho on one of my favorite little lakes with my favorite finesse jig. This is a little IR jig from Evergreen International. And what a jig. You know, for starters, it's gonna come in a variety of sizes. You know, so if you need a light little jig from a 1/4 ounce up to a 1/2 ounce, we're gonna have it here from Evergreen. But what I love about this jig, for one, it's a little ball head. So it's a little finesse jig, but a couple key features to me with the ball head are gonna be a hand-tied skirt. You know, that's really important. The hand-tied skirt, to me, why it's so important, you know, maybe you're thrown out there, you get a bite, you set the hook and you miss that fish, they're not gonna pull this skirt down where they can if it's not hand-tied. So that's a really big deal to me. Comes with a really good hook in here as well. It's a little 3/0 hook, so it's a small, compact jig with the perfect weed guard here. You know, this is a really light, soft weed guard, but it's strong enough to get through some of those rocks, some of that brush, that wood up on the bank or on the structure you're fishing. Also, it's got a really cool little keeper here too. You know, that's a big deal to me. You know, when I'm throwing it with some plastics, I want the plastic to be able to, you know, hang on there and not come off every time I set the hook. You know, and you look at the detail, the attention to detail Evergreen gave to these jigs, absolutely amazing. You know, a lot of these heads are multicolored. You know, you got some orange on this one. The skirts, like I say, are all hand tied, perfect for any situation to match the hatch, whether it's a certain crawdad or it's a bluegill. Again, absolutely love this jig. You know, a couple of plastic trailers I like to use with the IR jig. You know, there's really gonna be two, both from Yamamoto baits. This is a little fat baby craw here. This is a 3 3/4 inch craw. It's got a really good profile. This is a bait that when I rig up with the IR jig, I'm gonna use in colder water situations. Why? Because when you're throwing it out there, this is gonna kind of come down on the bait and it's not gonna have a ton of action. So in those colder water months, you know, late fall, winter, early spring, this is definitely gonna be the trailer I match up with the IR jig, and I'm gonna try to match it as close as possible. The other trailer I love is a 5-inch Yamamoto double-tail grub. So this is gonna be late spring, through summer, through the early fall, and this is gonna have a lot more action on this IR jig. You know, the fish are definitely gonna key into those tails, to the action moving, and seems like it helps get a lot of bites when the water is warmer. Let's rig this bait up right now. Let's get out on the water. Let me show you how I fish the IR jig. You know, when it comes to fishing the IR jig, I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. Really, spring through fall, I'm gonna fish it the same way. You know, I'm gonna let the jig hit the bottom. You know, we're trying to make this jig look like a crawfish, and crawfish definitely gonna stay close to the bottom. I'm gonna throw it down, I'm just gonna give it a quick pop and let it fall back down to the bottom. Maybe a quick 2 pops and go back down to the bottom. Really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, you know, drop it down as I'm bringing it down through the water column, you know, off of a rock, a ledge, a bush, whatever it might be. And I'm not gonna overwork the bait, but I definitely wanna give this bait some action. So I wanna pop it up and let it fall down. Pop it up, let it fall down. The only time I fish it different is going to be in the winter time. And why? Just the fish, you know, they're not as active, their metabolism slows down. So during the winter, I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm really just gonna drag this bait on the bottom and slowly pop the bait. You know, drag it, maybe give it a slight little pop. Drag, slight little pop. Where spring through fall, I'm gonna work the bait a lot more, you know, giving it a harder pop. So very easy to fish. Again, spring through fall, I'm gonna fish it the same way. Year round, fish are gonna eat the IR jig. You know, like I say, it's gonna resemble a crawfish. They're gonna eat them year round. I don't care if they're spawning to chasing shad, they're still gonna eat crawfish. And what a great bait, you know, fishing in deep rock, fishing shallow rock, you know, around some wood, it just flat out works. It comes through structure really well. Definitely a finesse jig that you can throw on a little bit bigger line, get a lot of bites, catch some big ones. When it comes to the setup that I prefer for the IR jig, you know, generally speaking, I like a 7 foot to a 7 foot 6 inch, you know, really medium heavy to a heavy rod, more on the medium heavy side. You know, I prefer the Daiwa Tatsu Elite 7 foot 6 flipping stick. You know, it's really more of a medium heavy to a heavy flipping stick, but it's got really good action to fish this jig. You want something a little bit longer. That way, if you do skip it up under a tree or whatever you're fishing, you can get that fish out. I prefer a 12 to a 16 pound fluorocarbon line. I go straight fluorocarbon. You know, I prefer the Daiwa J Fluoro Samurai. This is 16 pound fluorocarbon that I'm fishing this jig on today. And a high gear ratio is very important to me. 7 to 1 to an 8.5. You know, I'm throwing this on a Daiwa Tatsu Elite, but really that high gear ratio is really, really important. A lot of times you're making a long cast with this IR jig, you get a bite, or you're fishing deeper water. You want to have the power and the speed to get that fish up out of the cover and to land more of these fish, because you're going to get a lot of bites on this IR jig. Like I said, guys, this is definitely my favorite little finesse jig from Evergreen International, the IR jig. And what a fish catcher. Works throughout the year. If you guys want to give the IR jig a try, or any of the gear you guys saw today in this video, it's available right now at tacklewarehouse.com.